Hey Ash, how are you?
Good. How are you doing today?
Very,
Shalom.
very well, Shalom. Sorry, that was an abrupt. My finger actually hit the button more quickly than I wanted it to. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
It's so nice to see you. So you are coming from Japan.
Yes, yes, yeah. We moved to Okinawa, Japan back in March. And so it's been a really good transition, but definitely a lot to learn, being that we do live in the community and we don't like live on the base. So it's been really great, very humbling as well.
Okay, so that's why you're in Japan is because your husband is in. I'm sorry, I'm Canadian and I'm not very familiar with a lot of that. So he's in the army or he's in the.
So he actually doesn't work for the military. I mean, he works for the military, but he's not in the military. So he and I are both veterans. He did 10 years in the Marine Corps and got out and got a couple degrees in fire management or emergency management, paramedic. And so as a DoD employee, a Department of Defense, he's a civilian, but he works for the government essentially. And so he's had the opportunity to travel every military base that has a fire department, we have traveled. So for a long time, we were moving about once a year all over the United States. And he had an opportunity to come be an EMS chief here. And so he had felt like Abba was bringing him here. And so we took this leap and we moved all the way out here. And so we are civilians that is here to support the emergency management that's on the military bases and a lot of national foreign or I guess we're the foreign a lot of the nationals, which are the Japanese, are the firefighters. So we have a we interact a lot with the locals.
I did not see that coming. That's amazing. Thank you so much. One of us is freezing.
Oh, did
I'm
we
not.
freeze?
Yeah. Yep. I think it's, I mean, it might keep happening. I have full bars. I don't know on your end what it's like, but
Oh, let
yeah.
me switch real. All of the houses are made out of concrete because of the typhoons. And so we had to have an internet box upstairs and downstairs. So now I'm on the upstairs. Hopefully we won't have issues again.
Great. Thank you. It's really nice to be able to talk to you today of all days. I mean, maybe it's happened in the past, but last night or this morning, you posted something on Humble Happenings, which I would love for you to tell us what is Humble Happenings. And I mean, I don't know how many shares one post needs to be in order to be considered viral, but it was all over my timeline. Everyone I know shared your amazing post today on modesty, which obviously hit us all in different ways from different
Right.
scenes. Like, oh my goodness, have I been the one? So could you give us a little explanation of what is your project Humble Happenings, and then what that modesty post was about today, and why
Yeah, so great question. So Humble Happenings, I kind of came up with this a couple of years ago, actually, when I got called into this path. However, the Lord really like just kept my mouth shut, which is probably a good thing because a lot of times when we come to it, we have so much zeal that we end up becoming a tour terrorist. And I was that person. And so I think he really stopped me from doing a lot. And so my YouTube never really went anywhere. And since we've moved to Japan, I've really wanted to share my writings. It's been very humbling to me, but also I wanted to sharpen others. And and so Humble Happenings has really come from the fact that a lot of trauma in my life and how trauma has affected me in multiple ways, but healing has really helped me grow in my faith. And so a lot of the Humble Happenings is my life stories, my life lessons that I'm sharing with other believers. And I pray about it a lot. And the today's, or I guess I posted it last night, which would have, you guys woke up to it. And it actually was the most shared post. I feel like it went viral. I think I had 100 and some shares. I think I could
more
be
than
wrong on
that?
that.
It's more than 200. I was just checking.
Oh,
What do we
okay.
have
So
here?
it's got a lot. I am, and so last night I was, and I'm not, this is a long story too, is my head covering journey. Um, and so I was putting my head covering on. I'm not covering as much as before. And I was praying and just thinking about it. And the Father just put on me was like, is this vanity? And I was like, oh my gosh. And so he kind of worked through some things with me. And because I've been really praying, do I continue the head covering? Why is it my head covering now? And it was just like all of these things. And he put on my heart is, are you doing this for vanity? And so this is some things I just had to start working on. And I was like, I got to share this because I have been on the receiving end of being called, a harlot, a Jezebel. I'm not saved, especially when I was first new to the Christianity, because I didn't dress appropriate enough for some people. But I've also been on the other end. We're going, no, you should cover more because if you are saved and you should be doing this, then you need to be covering more. I have to wear my head covering. I have to be this way, right? And so it was really a lot about my heart posture. And so I've been on both receiving ends. And so I really want to start having more conversations on we got to stop looking on the outside because often, I mean, I still wear a little bit of makeup, but in some circles, I would be condemned for doing that. But yet my husband is like, I like when you do it, right? Like I don't go right full face. So sometimes we're in a different season. And so we have to ask the Father to guide us in that and not, especially for me, I was always trying to look at other people for approval and not look at Abba. And that has to change. We cannot get our approval from man. We have to get it from the Father. And yes, we should be helping it sharpen each other, but we should never be judging or condemning. Um, so yeah,
Well,
that
on
was the
and it is
Father sharing that.
on either side. It was so beautiful. It was so nice to read. I had had a bit of a back and forth with a sister who was saying that it was a sin not to cover your head, and I was like, I cover. I've been covering since before I was on this branch of my path. I started covering after reading First Corinthians 11, and anyway, I had my own journey with it, but I never once I did not I never look at another sister and say, I do, however, admittedly, if I see cleavage, like I get, it makes me, or like even my daughter, I have a teenager and sometimes she wears stuff that I don't.
Yes. Yes, I know that.
You have a daughter as well?
I do. She's going to be 17 in a couple of weeks. And I think the hardest thing about coming to this walk when your kids are older is that you can no longer really guide them. You can't train them up because they already have an idea of the world and what is appropriate and not appropriate. And there's a lot of really great books I've read, but one of the books I was like just hitting my daughter and I were just hitting, and I'm like, if you say you love the Father, why are you not doing this? If and so it wasn't out of heart, right? It was I need you to do this. But she was bucking the system. And it's really she's taught me a lot about my faith as well, about humbling myself. But this book really helped me and was like, stop trying to control,
Was it
right? Stop
specifically
trying to,
about parenting?
yeah, it's called Untangled. And it's about raising girls and why a lot of times, our girls, once they get into, young adulthood, teenage years, is that it's like this. And it's really to get to understand what's going on with them. And it's a fantastic book uh, about parenting. It's not faith-based, but it really helped me understand. And so I've had to back off and just love my daughter where she's at. And I have to be an example. And that's like I can say, hey, I don't think this is appropriate. Can we think about this? I can ask her questions and engage her, but I'm not judging. And so she's got to feel safe with me to come to me. And
Yeah.
I don't want to sacrifice the safety of who I am
And
as
she's
her
got to
mother.
she's got to come, thank you. She's got to come to all of that on her own, just like you did, just like I
Yes.
did. When I first came into the faith, I was terrified. I believed in pre-tribulation rapture, and I was terrified that if my kids didn't believe now, I would say stuff like this was 2 years ago for me, and I would say, like if mommy disappears one day, Like you're gonna have to find Jesus. Like I'm gone in the clouds, Like I was I anyway, things have
Right.
changed in my mind since then, but I was really desperate for them to believe. And
Yes.
then I it got me nowhere. It backfired completely
Mhm.
like it always does with kids.
Yes.
So I backed off and now they're getting baptized in a couple in August. They're both going to get
That's
baptized of their own heart. Like they gave up eating pork.
oh,
I never made them do any of this stuff, They just like now I see my son
wow.
is like
Yeah.
really checking all the ingredients of stuff or like we were at the
Yes.
ski hill and he's asking what kind of gravy it is. It they have to just like
That's awesome.
we all have friends who have partners who are, a sister whose husband is not on this path, and like, what can they do? You can't make him.
No, and that is definitely a lot of my husband was not in the walk, or I would even say a Christian, for a very long time. And that also taught me to be humble. And a lot of my understanding, and I am thankful for that, is that I was sitting there trying, I was basically judging and condemning the people around me, but then I seen this man that I love, right? And I see how he is good and how all these great things about him. So it was like it was really hard to see the man who he is, but he wasn't my covering, right? Like he wasn't praying for me. He wasn't reading scriptures. We'd fight, right? And argue over stuff. And I was trying to force him into something. And that taught me a lot about Yah's timing and how forcing, condemning, and judging only push them farther away.
Yep.
It hurt
And
my
it delays
marriage.
it delays it, right?
It does.
It
It, yep,
again, you see people
it does.
yelling like the fire and brimstone thing. I mean, you finally see somebody there and they're like, had this pork incident on my wall on my Facebook wall where I saw a Christian in my network that was she's starting to clue into like, okay, like there's like 42 comments here that of people who say that if you're in Christ you're not supposed to eating pork, but then the person who comes with fire and brimstone, that person unfriended me and ran away, and like it's going to take them another 8 months to start asking what they
Right.
should and shouldn't be. So
Exactly. Yeah.
so nice
Yeah.
to
We
hear you
have to
say
be
this.
so careful. We have to be so careful. I mean, I say that it hurt my marriage and hurt my relationship with my children for a while.
Can
And
you go
so,
back to then, Ash? Because I don't know, like, so you
yeah.
came somewhere to the faith at some point. Your husband wasn't there. I don't know how many kids you have. I don't even know where you're from. I just know you're in Japan and you don't sound like you're too much from the southern United States, but maybe somewhere there.
Yeah. So, okay. So I was raised in the military. My mom remarried when I was about 7 or 8 years old to a guy in the Navy, and we moved. So I was raised on the East Coast for the most part of my life, and met my husband. Now, I did not grow up with faith. I remember being, I think, in middle school, and I had a Bible, um, because I would go to like these churches that would pick us up on a bus and they would give us candy, like full size candy bars, right? Like that was like the dream for a middle schooler. So I would go to these events with these churches, and but I never understood it. I never like that wasn't talked about in home. I can look back and know where I've seen Yeshua in my life that had protected me from things, but I never understood it. And I had a Bible, and I remember writing my wishes on a piece of paper and I put them in the Bible and be like, okay, my wish is going to come true. Like, because I didn't know how it worked. I had no concept. And at 16, I really liked to go with my friend to her church, the Catholic church. And I really loved her family. She, had an amazing dad who really was the head of the house, who a mother, they had, they prayed all the time. They ate family. They were very healthy and they were a very safe place for me in times where I was very unsafe. And so they became like this family that I wanted to have. And I went and got baptized at 16. My family did not come. My mom, dad, I was actually told I was going to go to hell because of that. But I didn't understand that concept, right? I'm like, but I'm going to church. You're not. Like, I don't understand. Um,
I still don't
so I was like in
understand. I still don't really understand what the Your parents weren't believers. You went and got
No.
baptized, and they were saying you were going to go to hell for being baptized. I'm not missing anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, you're
Okay.
exactly right. It was just I think there was just a lot of confusion and there scripture God, it was not in growing up. And if I want to be honest, we were on survivor mode as kids. There was no opportunity to have a safe home. We were survivals or on safe survivor mode. We were survivors. Um, so then when I met my husband, I was 19. I had a lot of trauma that had happened to me. Um, I was raped, and it was just like I was struggling a lot mentally. I was drinking, I was party scene. I went from one end of the spectrum of I at 16, I love this Catholic family and I want to be like them, to I'm going to go to the church because I need something. I need to feel something. But you know, 6, 7 days out of the week, I'm going to drown my pain in somehow, whether that would be drugs or alcohol. I went from hiding in a closet at my grandmother's house to realizing my body was nothing but for men to use, to the other spectrum of just whatever. And so it was like this really turmoil time period. And I met my husband in a parking lot in Memphis. And like I know love at first sight is like unrealistic, right? Okay. However, there was something that hit me in my heart, right? Like there was, it's yeah at work at this point, right? Because Ian, my husband, he's a good man. He is loving, he is forgiving. Um, he is a provider. You know, he's got a lot of amazing things. Um, and so we ended up together within a couple of months. We're pregnant, we're married. Like it was like one thing at another. Now he's Episcopal. And so he was like, listen, I'm not doing the Catholic thing. You have to be you can do the Episcopal thing. And so I went and I was like, okay, it's close enough. I don't know anything about doctrines. I don't know anything about anything. I'm just like, it's just a church, right? Like, whatever. We'll do our Sunday thing. We're good people, right? Meanwhile, we're still drinking. We're still not living anything, right? Like, it is what it is. He's in the military. He's a Marine. Um, and so I was hungry at this stage. I was at the Episcopal Church. I was in the Sunday with the kids. I was going like 5, 6 days a week to this church. I was hungry. I wanted information. And so my husband he has his own issues, like with trauma and his own things with the church, but he just wasn't that way. He'd go with me on Sunday, but he liked going out with the men to go to drinking, to do the men group drinking, you know? But and he liked to learn. And I could see that he was a little hungry there, but it was still an excuse to still do the wrong things. Like, right? Like, we're good people. We go to church. Um, and that was basically our life. I was still hungry and I ended up bouncing around as we moved. I would check out different churches. I was hungry and the church wasn't filling me. And I think I went to every type of church there was. I went down the Buddhist path. I went down like occult. I started getting to the occult. Um, I was seeking truth and nothing could fulfill me. I had too many questions that no one could answer. And my kids grew up in that. And about, oh gosh, 2020, um, we went to Tennessee and we started getting invited to a home church. And at first I thought, you guys are crazy. You guys are in a cult. Like, this is crazy. I'm not doing that. Right. Eventually, my daughter was like, Mom, I want to go. Like, my friends are going. And so I was like, all right, we could go. Right. And it was amazing. It was like a Bible study that dug in deep stuff that that was kind of what I was looking for. And so my faith started to grow and grow. Now, at this point, like I'm being fed, but it's still not the truth. But it was more of the truth that I did have. Okay. And I started to meet people along this time. And so my husband's still like, yeah, no, I'm good. you know. But here's where it got hard was that my idea, because remember, I'm a trauma survivor. So my identity used to come from what people thought of me. And so they would be saying things like, well, your husband needs to be doing XYZ. If your husband's the man, he should be doing XYZ. Why is he not here reading the Bible with us? Why is he not studying? Why is he not praying? Why is he not doing all of these things? And so it became a judgment. And so then I started to judge my husband because I was like, if you love me, you would be doing all of these things. You would be building me a house. I know that you work for 48, 72 hours at a time and you come home and you're tired. And for 24 hours, you want some peace, but I need you to build me a house. I need you to be a man. Right. And so I started to check his manhood, and that's not good. And so there kind of started to come out like a lot of turmoil. I can look back and go, okay, those people were just emotionally immature. And I still pray for them and all of that. But it was good because it helped feed me, but it was bad because I started to look down upon my family. And and so the group kind of split up because there were some different things. It was just, how groups are, people are, we're all hurt, right? And our house burnt down, and our log cabin that we had in the mountains of Tennessee burnt down. And it was January 2022. And that pretty much devastated us. My daughter and I were in the house when it happened. Um, it, I, I was grabbing animals. She had to run to the nearest neighbor's house to call 911. I would say probably within 15, 20 minutes, everything was completely down to the ground. The roof fell. I was running back in and out to grab animals, to try to grab stuff. Not a smart idea. Do not recommend doing that. um, and so we watched our house burn down. And that was really hard because that, I mean, I've had a lot of trauma in my life. But when you are on a walk of you think everything's great in that Christian mindset, bad things don't happen, right? When you do right things. And yet my life is gone. My daughter, is was in there, but I mean she was safe, but what she had witnessed, you know. Um, but it was also a turning point. It was the beauty from the ashes that came from that. We ended up living in an RV, and I am begging, yeah, at this point, right? Like I'm praying out to God. I'm like, why? Is my husband not a good man? Why is he not doing XYZ? Please change my husband. I would spend hours crying, prostrating in prayer. Change my husband.
And the changes that you were praying about were the things that the people in that home church group kind of put in your head of how a man should be acting. Which
Correct.
in
Correct.
retrospect, he wasn't doing anything wrong. You just were feeding off of.
Right. He wasn't faithful enough. He didn't read scripture. He wasn't praying with us. He wasn't leading us, his family. He was still drinking. He was watching TV. He was on social media. He wasn't doing enough, essentially. And and so we also had I started to become a little bit more modest then. And I never liked Christmas ever. And at this point in time, I'm like, listen, I'm not doing Christmas anymore, right? I really didn't want to. I was very putting my foot down
Was
more
that
than I had done
something,
in the
was that
past.
something that came from the home study group or from you starting to read more on your own or?
So with the Christmas thing, Christmas was just trauma based for me.
Uh-huh.
There was nothing that came from. And so for me, I didn't, as my husband loved it. And so when we had children, I said, can we just do a couple of gifts? I was very much into thinking about it as financial struggle as well as let's not add to environmental issues. I don't want to have spoiled children. Like I had a lot of reasons not to do Christmas. I did not like it. I seen the demons that came out during that holiday. And And so I didn't like it, but I was trying to be a good wife. My husband liked it. He's like, let's create something good for our children, right? And then one year before the home church, we did a study on the history of Christmas because we homeschool. And I was like, listen, if we're going to do Christmas, let's be honest about what it is and what it's not. Like let's just be straight up honest about it's not Jesus's birthday. This is not a faith-based holiday. I didn't know anything about the feast. I just knew that this was wrong. And then the home church was like, if you do this, you're really, they didn't do the feast. They just said like all holidays were bad. And so that really made me go, we should not be doing this. Like, I know it was bad before, but we really should be doing this. And so there was a lot of like condemning from me with my husband around that time of the year. Um, and it was very difficult because like that was his good childhood memories. So it was like it was an opposite. Um, so yeah, that's kind of where these ideas like kept pushing, like my husband's not doing. And so when I'm prostrating and I'm praying, make him a man of God, make him a man of God.
This is not that long ago, Ash, and you have so much, like
Yep.
you're so removed from it, and you can see all of these places, like these kind of reoccurring themes throughout your entire life just there in front of you. And they're all kind of wrapped up in that post that you put out, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so that is when the Father actually sent his Holy Spirit. I heard him say to me as I'm praying and I'm crying, he said, cover your head. Now, I don't know what this meant because I'm like, what does covering my head mean? I couldn't go back into deep prayer. I could not feel his presence anymore. So I didn't even have a skirt. I had belly dancing skirts, like, and I grabbed a shawl. We're living in an RV at this point. I grab a shawl and put over my head because I don't have a head covering. I don't even know what a head covering is. What the heck are we talking about? Right? I have no idea what this is. I put the head covering on and I could feel his presence again. And
Mm.
he was like, you are just for me. And so I could no longer wear my jeans. All of a sudden, I am being covered from head to toe. And I recognized that that was definitely something that I needed to do. I had to, because during that time, I was shunned from that group. I was told I was listening to demons, that I
Be-
wasn't the saved,
because of your husband
my head, because of my head covering and changing to be a modest.
from that same group that was saying your husband wasn't doing enough.
Yeah, from some of them. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm
And so
trying
it's
not to
interesting.
react. I'm trying to be neutral, but you're saying a lot of wild things. Okay, I'm listening.
Yes. So it was very hard. Like I cried because here I am who has to get my who I am from other people. And now I'm being told I'm doing wrong, but I'm being obedient to the Father. And then this zeal comes about me because not only did he talk to me, but he downloaded information into me. Things that I never knew, understood, comprehended, or seen that is just like it's just amazing. It has to be spiritual, right? Like I didn't come up with that stuff for sure. And so here I am. You anywhere I go, I look different. People look at me. We I did have a couple of very supportive women during that time too. The study group had broken off. And so half of them who basically were saying I was wrong, that I'm listening to demons and spiritual things don't happen and there's no spiritual realm and all these things, which is confusing and contrasting. I do recognize that. But then this other group was like, yeah, we don't think that we should be doing this. And interestingly, they were kind of told to head cover at the same time, but we didn't know that we were all told to head cover. And so when I had seen them a couple weeks later, it was like, oh, what is this? Like, and so we had that conversation. And I think that the Father did that to help support me because these were very wise people, stronger in their faith than I was, and they loved me. And then we got moved to Indiana. And that is where it became very, very hard because I had no community. I had family there, but they basically didn't understand me. They didn't know me. Um, I've had difficult conversations. I've had family members ask me straight out, um, am I a Muslim? What do I believe? Do I even believe in God? Who am I trying to follow? What's wrong with me? Uh, I thought I was never invited to any events that they would put on. I was, in a lot of ways, I don't want to say I was completely shunned, but in a lot of ways, I was, you know, like I wasn't invited in. And it became a very hard, lonely place because at the same time, I'm condemning my family, right? Like I'm looking at them with content because they're not walking in the way that the Father has. And He put so much zeal in me, like so many of us, right? So it's like I have this love and I want to share it. And yet I have no one to share it with. And I cannot tell you how many days and nights I would just cry. I would cry because I was lonely. I was heartbroken. Um, but that was the most growth I've ever had as well, because the Father really made me rely on Him and not others.
Which is,
And
and that was, sorry to cut you off, but it will resonate. I noticed recently how, like any good parent, like I'm not gonna treat my daughter and my son the same because they're very different individuals. And
yes,
I've noticed how he does that with us. He gives us the challenges and the trials that we need and puts us through the fire in a very specific, tailor-made way that like what you need to go
yes,
through isn't what I need to go through. It might bring us to a similar place, but we got there because he knew
right.
exactly what buttons to push to make us.
Yes, yes. And I had to get off of the people pleasing, and I really had to get off of that idea, like, because I was a huge people pleaser. And being in a situation where that's not available, it really makes you question. It makes you question your worth. It makes you question a lot of things. And so, I mean, it was a lot. And my husband and I still had a lot of conflict. And then basically some stuff happened and I left my husband. I took my daughter and I left. Um, Now I did this, I will say this, we started counseling in
Is
like
this maybe like
August, September.
2023 or
Oh no, this was last year. This was 2024.
okay.
November 2024 is when I left. So not that long ago. Um, it was about August, September is when we finally started counseling because I was kind of to the point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like we have to be able to communicate. And I had hurt him so much that I wasn't safe to him. So, because I had one thing with men is that me comparing him to another man and basically checking his manhood, that is like one of the worst things a wife could do. I had no idea. I did it to my son too. Him and his best friend, I'd be like, hey, you should be more like your friend, thinking that like they like competition, right? Not like that. I didn't understand the hurt I caused them because I was telling them that you're not enough. And that of course was not my intent, but intent doesn't necessarily it does not mean it doesn't hurt. So that is something I had to learn. And so we started counseling, we started family counseling, like lots of things happened where I wasn't sure what was going to happen. And I had to rely on my faith in the Most High. But November, some things happened and I was told to leave. And so I took my daughter and we left. Didn't tell my husband where we're at. Um, and it was good though, believe it or not. Um, I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know if we were going to go through divorce. I did not know. I was already starting to look at a different life for myself and my daughter. I was starting to look for, I have my own businesses. So I have income that I could support us if needed, but I knew he would support us. Um, but I was just very much like, I don't know what's going to happen. But he needed that. See, he needed, Yah needed me to be removed so he could work on Ian. And that had to happen in order for Ian to be able to hear the Father. And he did. And he came to that himself. And I came back home. We came back home in January. And so this is kind of where all this humbling, this, I mean, this is life. This is a lot of my humbleness has come through the fire. And so I always try to tell myself I'm being refined into gold because the Father is my furnace. And those hard things where I'm crying and I'm upset and I'm trying to figure life out, those are lessons. And so this whole modesty post, so like my husband, so that's kind of how this whole story happened was like I went from not being modest to now I'm kind of like in the between. The Father has kind of like I could not wear head covering and I don't feel the presence of being told, what are you doing? And one thing I don't want to ever think or want others to think is that they must wear a head covering because it's sin or not sin. For some women, they are called to wear full time. For some, it's part time. For some, it is a head covering. Some, it's completely like there's so many different walks, but each one of us probably struggles in some way, one way or another. The other thing is a covering, could represent, not always, but in my case, it was a representation that I didn't have a covering. I didn't have a husband that covered me. And so I needed that covering. It was also my reminder to be a submissive, loving wife that I needed on a daily basis. Um,
It's
and
beautiful.
so,
And it's this pendulum, right? That like maybe you wrong.
yes,
I often think like I won't show my show. I don't know if you saw in that so we have a Heart of Modesty group for anybody watching that's not in it and wants to join, come. It's a very nice place. And we talk about all these things, including modest dressing. And one of the women there designs clothes, and she was posting to see if people in that group would personally wear a shirt that was off the shoulder with a tank top. I don't know if you saw that post. And um yeah, I mean, you go through the comments, and thankfully, there was every answer you could imagine. It wasn't a uniform. This is what it is. When I started covering my head and I was going to Sunday church, the conversation was, "Oh, she's being legalist," and then I stopped eating pork.
yes,
Then it just went even worse legalist for them.
right,
I think that's when it becomes a problem is when, especially when we as women start to tell our sisters how they're supposed to dress. No, that's not the conversation. The conversation is, would you wear this? Me? No, because 2 years ago, I was running around in a spaghetti strap with no bra ever, half naked all the time as a yoga teacher. So now I'm like, nobody sees my ankles. And I
right,
think that maybe eventually one day, like I tried leaving the house with my head uncovered a couple of, like I physically can't do it. I can be in my house and it's
right,
or like a client's husband showed up in my house the other day and I like kind of like panicked and like I almost had like a blanket on my it's like okay.
yeah,
I'm
right,
hoping, assuming eventually like where I can see with he made you go all the way to one extreme and then you know
right,
maybe we can find the balance and it's different for everybody hopefully, and that's a great thing, right?
yes. Yeah, it is. And like if you would have told me that a year or 2 years ago, I'd been like, no way, I'm never not doing this again. But that was just the season I was in. And I think that it's kind of like in that middle. My husband does like me to have my hair down. And a lot of times I wear it at home, but if we're going out, I might just do like a headband. A lot of times it's in prayer, I'm asking. And sometimes I get very firm, you're covering your head, because I do think there are some spiritual applications as well. Usually I will wear my head if my husband's not home. Like if I'm going to cover mostly, it's going to be when my husband's not home. Now, if he's home, I definitely feel covered more. And so I don't like yesterday we went to the gym and I totally forgot to put a head covering on. Like usually I'll just wear something, that it can get sweaty and everything. But a couple years ago, I was wearing my head covering while I was swimming. So it never basically came off my head. And now I'm kind of like, well, I can wear it down. I'll wear it braided. I have all kinds of different ways I can wear it, but I don't have that physical where I'm literally stopped at the door. because that was me. If I would literally, I would forget sometimes, and I'd be literally stopped at the door and like, nope, you're not covered enough.
What an incredible testimony. It's very edifying for me too, because my head covering journey was supernatural and I wasn't really able to, and I didn't have people like you even online in my life at that point at all. I was alone in a Baptist church with my head completely covered and I couldn't really explain why, and and then as I started to meet people online from the Torah community, I remember trying to find in the Bible if there was a commandment to cover your head because I'm like, all of these women know that we're supposed to follow the Torah. I'm starting to get used to the idea of what this means, and they're all covering their heads. So like, what is it? And it's
Yeah.
not a commandment you're going to find in the so we're all in our own time, and maybe some of us will never be. And I just want to always have love and respect for those women who don't have the call to cover their head because not covering your head is not like, oh, well, I'm still eating bacon because he said it was okay. It's not the same thing.
No, it's not. It's really not. And, a lot of times I think it's prescriptive rather than, just blanket, right? Like we know that an example a lot of times I will use is like my daughters and my husband need vitamin D. Like they have to physically take vitamin D because even though we live in a very sunny places, their body does have a hard time converting it into what they need in their body. And so they have to be on a supplement. Okay. Now, for some people, it's not like, okay, vitamin C. We don't produce vitamin C. We have to eat it. Every person has to eat vitamin C. So it's not a vitamin C issue, it's a vitamin D issue, right? Like, and so we have to remember that. And we also have to remember we're all in different seasons, like I use this example a lot. Like we do not look at a kindergartner and go, you are so dumb. Why are you not doing algebra? Right? We don't do that. We're like, wow, you know your ABCs and you're counting and you're tying your shoes. That is fantastic. And we don't go and make them multiply, right? We say, well, let's add. Let's do 1 and 1. What does that equal? How many cookies do you have? Oh, you have two. Yay. Right. And so we meet them where they're at and we lift them
As
up.
Christ does, right? That's the whole point, and that's what I think
Exactly.
we often again with the zeal when you come into this new thing, like you said it already, but we're like everybody's like a elephant in a china shop. Like you get so passionate and so excited, and you need everybody around you to know that they're wrong. Um,
Yes.
I'm learning. I mean,
Yeah.
it's all still very, very new for me, and I'm learning how to calm down because I've just seen so many examples of what, we're talking about our kids or the people around us that if there's just like there was nothing a few months before I started cluing into Torah being the truth. I saw people in my kind of very far network posting, and I remember it made me really angry, and I remember going to the pastors, and I knew enough the language, even though I was still very new in church, to be like, why do these people think they're Jewish and they're under Mosaic law? Like I
Yeah.
knew that was the question to ask, and it was really infuriating me. And now I see, of course, people in my periphery who are just violently angry at me for the
Yes.
way that I believe. But it's such a good sign because I know overnight their eyes can be opened. But there's nothing I can do. If
Yes.
I keep saying like, oh, if you keep doing this, you're gonna perish. Like, no, they'll run. Like,
Yeah, exactly. We have to love them. And that's definitely something I've learned. And, my husband and I are still working on that safety component because we both hurt each other, right? Like I told him he wasn't enough. He told me I wasn't enough, right? Like that's not good, regardless. In any marriage, we've been married for 20 years. So one thing that we started to talk about the Sabbath is he's starting to lead a little bit more, and with the feast that just passed, I was frustrated because I was like, I want you to do this, but he's like, I don't know what to do. He's like, I need you to
so
do it.
So what was that gap then? Because you're talking about having covered your head for a number of years, and you're talking about leaving just in November and coming back, and him having whatever realization he had in the last few months. So now he's still. Can you give me a few more details of like when you came in and he?
Yeah.
You caught up?
So it was about 2022, is when the Holy Spirit came to me and when I started covering. So about 2020, 2021 is when I started to come into Torah, but I wasn't fully there. Like I just started to grow my faith,
And it
essentially.
wasn't, was that part of it with the home group? Is that what they were?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah. So they helped me answer a lot of questions that I had as going to like a Sunday church.
So
They
that's
were definitely
also, sorry,
more
Ash, but that's also why they were probably a little bit more judgy on what he was and wasn't doing because they were in that
correct.
militant, okay. It's not
Right.
like you found a Sunday gathering where it was Baptists who are live and let live and okay. Okay.
Right. Yeah. And so and then he just came to know Yah, really, 2020, December of 2024.
Okay. Okay. Wow.
So, but I had been in scripture like up until about, when I was about 16, even though it was very little when I was 16. Once I had kids, it became more. And so I've always been in a little bit more studying than he has. So like he's very new. Like he is like, yeah, I like he heard, the Most High's voice. The Most High actually told him when he was praying, he was saying God, and the Most High said, "You call me Yahweh." And so that happened, and like he had this whole like vision. Like he like I don't want to give it too much into his because his testimony is amazing. Like the seraphim he's seen with his eyes, like he didn't even know what it was. Like he was explaining to me, he's like this great, and I was like, oh my gosh, like he was like, and it was just amazing. Um, and he was like, I know you had to leave. The Most High, told me you had to leave because if not, I wouldn't have been here. Like, I know he told you XYZ. He's like, I know why you cover. He told me you cover because I haven't been a covering for you. Like, he had all of this information and he's like, I don't want to celebrate Christmas. He started to see things. I think our family may have like I don't know. I'd say it's whenever Yah wants to show us the spiritual realm. But during Christmas time, my husband actually seen the demons while he's at Walmart shopping. He's like, I cannot believe like some scales were removed from his eyes, right? So he's still learning. Um, he's still like he is a babe, I guess, or maybe a child. He's learning, he's asking questions. And so it's beautiful to see, and I have to remember that because I've been, I'm much more further in my understanding. And I never want that to be, I never want him to look at that as any, like I don't want that to be what do you call, like a
Well,
difference in our
you already
marriage.
went through that weird power dynamic with you trying to be over top, and now even though you might know more, you're leaving him the space
Right.
to figure it out. This is so beautiful and so inspiring.
Yes. But I will tell you, he really said something to me that it was really good. I was like, I'm really trying not to lead in this. I'm really not trying to teach because like, I don't want to be your teacher. I'm not your teacher. I'm your helpmate. And he goes, so if I was drowning, would you let me drown or would you help me up? And I was like, well, I would help you up. He goes, because you share the raft with me. You don't teach me how to get out of the water. You share the raft. And it really hit me. He was like, stop teaching me, share with me. Share with me what this holy day is. Share with us. And he's like, this is what we need. We don't need you to teach. We need you to share your life. And I was like, I thought I was doing that. He was like, no, you haven't been doing that. You have been teaching and judging, but you haven't just sat down and shared. And that really hit me because I was like, but I thought I was sharing, right? But I've also been so careful to walk very, very careful about what I do because I did not want, because I was pushing it down their throat, right? With all of my zeal. I was like pushing it and saying everything they were doing was wrong, right? You have to do it this way. And so I wasn't sharing. I was force feeding them meat when they needed to be on milk. And so I stepped back a lot. Like I kind of go hands out, right? Like I read my scriptures, I read my studies, I'll share something, but I'm pretty much hands off. And I asked him to lead. this feast. And he's like, I don't even know what this is. Like, teach me. Or he's like, share with me. And he was like, we'll sit down as a family and you share this information, ask us questions, bring us into it.
So
And I
was
was
this
like,
the
oh,
Shavuot this year? I'm assuming that's what you're talking
yes,
about. You had already celebrated.
yes, Shafu.
Was this your first family feast where you were actually all on board wanting to, like, you guys didn't do even Passover? This is like really the,
Yeah, so this one was so with Passover this year. This is really difficult because we are actually in transition from a hotel to another hotel because one of our hotels ended and we had to go to another hotel and then we had to move into a house with nothing in it. And so I was like, this is the true Exodus story right here because we are literally,
there's no yeast
we
in your
have
bread,
nothing.
even if you want yeast in your bread, you don't have it.
No, no. And so so basically for this Passover, he was on board, but it was just not a true what I would call a Passover. Like I went and got some art supplies and I did like this art board and was like, we had a little fun with it, but it really wasn't like we read some scriptures, but it really wasn't like a feast, right? And so a couple of years ago, Passover, when we first moved to Indiana, he was on board but I had invited family and it was a catastrophe. Oh my gosh. When I read the about a year ago, when I was reading about how to have the Passover, it says to bring only people who want to be there. I missed that part. I missed that part. I invited people because I wanted to share my life with them,
Yeah.
and it was a
Not the right
catastrophe.
time, right? It's probably
No.
the feast that's the least appropriate time to try to help people. It's really for people who,
Yeah.
well, really whose hearts are circumcised. That's the whole thing about actually
Yes.
speaking in the lamb. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Yes.
Whoa.
Yeah. But I had missed that.
Yeah.
Totally missed that. And so he was there for that. And he supported me that because he knew that was really important. And so he did support, like he even sung and he does not like to sing, but he even sung with me and like he did a lot. He's been supportive of me. Um, but I have tried to really be careful about not hurting his feelings. And so like we did Sukkot last year. We went to Michigan as a family to go camping. But I was like, we should be at a holy convocation, right? Like we should be with a bunch of people. And he was like, we're going to go out into the wilderness. And so it wasn't, so our feast haven't looked like what I wanted it to look like.
Not yet though, right?
And
Because now
not
I think
yet,
it's
right?
all now you're watching it move
Yes,
forward in such a beautiful way and
yes,
wow, I'm so excited for you. This is what a story.
yes. Yeah. And so I would also just say for any viewers out there who are like, this is not how it's supposed to be. Why am I, you know what? There's different seasons. And I had to contend with a lot of things that it shouldn't be this way. Like we're supposed to be honoring it this way. And sometimes you gotta remember that Yah meets us where we're at. And sometimes what we're doing is what is needed. And so it may not be perfect, but it may be what we need.
And it's a lesson to those people that were in the group with you condemning him for not being where you were at, right? Like it's the
Yeah,
I'm it sounds weird, but I just see this thread running through every single thing that you've talked about. It's incredible how it's
it
all
really is.
and it's like everything makes perfect sense. Wow. I'm
Yes.
still a little weirded out about how if your if your husband is so implicated in firefighting stuff, how that house burnt down. I'm having that's
Yeah. So we have
wild. I mean, I'm not wild.
yeah.
Just for me, it's I mean, it's not a coincidence, right? There's some crazy thing
No.
to try to.
And what was interesting is I heard the word fire right before it started to go down.
Yeah.
And so I try to put it out. They believe that because you have a fire inspection come out and everything like that. We did have like a mouse, maybe a rat, that
You know,
squirrel, I don't know. Yes. And so the house was a log cabin and there was like I don't know, something on there that was highly, highly flammable to keep the wood shiny and safe. And so they believe that it must have been one of the animals that chewed through the wires, which would have made sense because we had things go missing. Like my essential oil bottles would actually go missing. And we knew where, like we trapped it once. It was a huge rat. That's like horrible, but like we had animals to try to keep, the wild animals out of our house, but it was a log cabin that was not 100% secure, essentially. And so whether it was something that chewed on it and it sparked it just enough, um, you know, that's what they think that's happened. But I heard the word fire and I was in the kitchen thinking, okay, is it in the kitchen? And it was actually in my bedroom.
Wow.
So
And
yeah.
that was the turning point. That's wild. My mind is blown, Ash. I'm super happy. It's late at night for me and it's early in your morning and
Yes.
your day ahead. Is it Friday for you yet? No, it's Thursday.
No, it's Thursday morning now.
Great. Great. Wow, what a
Yes.
pleasure. I'm so happy that the timing worked out so well and I hope that we can talk again about
Absolutely.
else very soon. I'm really excited for your project and I hope that you keep sharing.
Thank you.
I think trauma is a really interesting thing because I think a lot of times in the Christian world we believe that we can yeah, that's a show for another time. I will actually
Oh, yes.
let's purposely just shelve this and then we can come back and talk about trauma and demons and demonic transference and psychotherapy and all of, can we
Oh,
do that sometime? Can we do a
I
show
would love
talking about that?
to because I actually
Okay.
wrote something about how the Christian church actually, or the faith church, actually feeds mental health issues. So I would love to talk about that because I
Okay.
have a lot to say on that.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a great plan. Anyway, this was super inspiring and I'm really happy to see what else you keep writing. You're very talented and you're
Thank you.
sometimes a simple Facebook post is actually life-changing for somebody who's going to read it. And I know
Yes.
a lot of women felt what you wrote in that one post today. So please keep it coming.
I am so glad. I'm glad that Abba, I just pray every day that Abba blesses it and uses me as an instrument to sharpen others and bring them to him. So all
Um,
praise to be him.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day and week.
Thanks, you too. Bye.